primal caretakers, immense beings possessing a profound grasp of universal forces. Their stature was matched only by their ancient wisdom, a knowledge that stretched across eons, intertwined with the very fabric of existence. Throughout countless star-spanning civilizations, they were held in awe, their guidance sought on matters of conflict, accord, and discovery. These majestic creatures could command stellar energies, diverting solar outbursts, reinforcing faltering suns, and even navigating entire worlds through treacherous cosmic tempests. For those under their benevolent watch, they represented an emblem of steadfastness and optimism. However, as epochs unfolded, the galactic hegemony began to emerge, a confederation of advanced species driven by a desire for unified dominion. The hegemony's expansion was meteoric, and with its ascent came an unavoidable re-evaluation of perception. The celestial worms, formerly revered as sagacious protectors, were now perceived as untamed forces, too potent to be permitted unchecked influence in a galaxy increasingly defined by structure and governance. The hegemony flourished on order, administrative systems, and stringent oversight, while the worms embodied something far more ancient, something that eluded categorization. The worms held the capacity to shape the destinies of entire sectors, a prospect the galactic hegemony deemed intolerable. They harbored anxieties about potential actions by the worms that might not align with the hegemony's strategic objectives. What if, on some future day, a worm deemed a planet or a civilization unworthy of safeguarding? What if they chose to reconfigure the cosmos according to their own designs? The sheer unpredictability of such a scenario haunted the hegemony's leadership. Consequently, the hegemony declared the worms a menace, disseminating official pronouncements that characterized them as vestiges of a bygone era, relics no longer to be trusted. They initiated a disinformation campaign, persuading the galaxy that these once venerated beings were, in fact, a threat to universal harmony and established order. Apprehension pervaded, and it wasn't long before planets that had once celebrated the worms turned against them, contributing resources and legions to the hegemony's pursuit. The systematic eradication of the celestial worms commenced. Over decades, they were tracked, their sanctuaries discovered, and their cosmic power centers neutralized. With each worm that fell, the hegemony proclaimed triumph, reinforcing its grip on the galaxy and further justifying its actions. In time, the worms grew exceedingly scarce, and the galaxy became noticeably quieter. Some civilizations lamented their passing, but fear had already taken root too profoundly. The last of his lineage stood defiant against the hegemony's unrelenting pursuit. Unlike his predecessors, he had recognized the hegemony's true intentions from the outset. Evading capture for years, he was no mere beast. He possessed the knowledge of ages, understanding how to dissipate into the star fields, conceal himself within the shadows of black holes, and mask his immense energetic signature. Yet the hegemony had also advanced. Their technologies grew more sophisticated, their hunters more merciless. They no longer sought discourse, only annihilation. Eventually, he was located. Following a grueling and protracted engagement, even his formidable strength could not withstand the relentless onslaught of the hegemony's advanced armada. They overwhelmed him not through valor or might, but through sheer numerical superiority and technological prowess. His cosmic abilities, which had once altered the course of conflicts and preserved entire civilizations, were no match for the concentrated firepower of the galactic hegemony's war vessels. However, the hegemony did not end his life. They feared his demise could unleash untold quantities of cosmic energy, triggering catastrophic events across adjacent sectors. Instead, they opted for a more insidious fate: exile. He was bound, his wings and cosmic capabilities rendered inert by advanced hegemony technology. They marooned him on a toxic, desolate world, situated so far from the core systems that no vessel would ever chance upon it. The worm, broken and debilitated, lay upon the planet's surface, surrounded by nothing but jagged rock and acrid air. His colossal form, once radiating with the brilliance of celestial bodies, had dimmed. His scales, once vibrant and shimmering with the universe's energy, were dull and fractured. The planet's silence was oppressive, a stark contrast to the lively, thriving systems he had once protected. He could no longer perceive the comforting resonance of the cosmos surrounding him. The stellar energies were now distant and unattainable. Alone, he contemplated the betrayal. The civilizations he had rescued, the planets he had stabilized, the species he had guarded, they had all turned against him. He had once believed his power and wisdom would be sufficient to guide the galaxy toward peace, but the hegemony's insatiable desire for control had proven more potent. Their fear had distorted everything. He prepared for his end. His kind were not meant to exist in such solitude, severed from the very energies that sustained them. His body, once linked to the stars, would wither in this noxious atmosphere. His mind, keen and vast, began to dull under the weight of the galaxy's betrayal. It would be a slow, agonizing demise, but perhaps a fitting end for the last of the celestial worms. Yet, even as his end seemed imminent, a small ember of defiance remained. Somewhere deep within, a flicker of rebellion persisted. The human survey crew was a small but cohesive unit, selected for their expertise, resilience, and willingness to confront the unknown. Their objective was straightforward: to explore hostile, uncharted planets on the fringes of the galaxy and evaluate them for potential resource extraction. They were not the first to undertake such perilous ventures, but they had earned a reputation for surviving the most extreme conditions. The team comprised scientists, engineers, and several former military personnel who had witnessed their share of turmoil, but always returned to push the boundaries of human exploration. After all, humans had long been renowned for their innate curiosity and adaptability. No planet was deemed too dangerous, no environment too unforgiving. This particular crew, hardened by years of such assignments, thrived on challenges that might deter others. Leading them was Captain Elena Drace, a veteran explorer with a history of surviving inhospitable worlds. Accompanying her were Dr. Malcolm Reyes, a brilliant yet unconventional xenobiologist, and Lieutenant Jax Harmon, a former fighter pilot turned mechanic with an uncanny ability to repair the irreparable. Their mission led them to a remote sector, far removed from the core worlds of the galactic hegemony. The planet they targeted was officially designated as uninhabitable, its atmosphere toxic, and its surface barren. Scans indicated no valuable resources, but this did not deter them. Earth's resources were finite, and humanity required new sources to sustain its expanding presence among the stars. If they could locate anything, however insignificant, worth extracting, their expedition would be deemed a success. However, events did not unfold as anticipated. As the vessel entered the planet's orbit, a sudden and violent malfunction within their systems sent the craft spiraling towards the surface. The crew fought valiantly to regain control of the vessel, but their efforts were in vain. They crashed violently, their ship impacting the rocky terrain with great force, leaving them stranded with limited provisions and a critically damaged craft. In the immediate aftermath of the impact, the crew worked with urgency to assess the extent of the damage. The ship remained sufficiently intact to offer shelter, but crucial systems were beyond repair. Without adequate tools, and given the planet's toxic atmosphere, they were unable to venture far without specialized environmental suits, and they had no means of requesting assistance. It was a dire situation, but desperation was not an unfamiliar companion for them. They had weathered worse. The team's focus shifted to survival. They established a makeshift camp, rationing their dwindling supply of food and water while attempting to restore the ship's life support systems. Yet, even as they struggled to maintain hope, Dr. Reyes remained restless. His mind was perpetually occupied with the mysteries of alien life, and despite the planet's apparent lifelessness, he could not shake the sensation that there was more to discover. Venturing beyond the crash site in search of materials to repair the ship, Dr. Reyes, accompanied by Harmon and a few others, stumbled upon a discovery none of them could have foreseen. As they traversed the desolate landscape, they encountered a colossal figure, partially entombed within the planet's rocky crust. At first glance, the figure appeared to be merely an ancient, inanimate mass, perhaps the remains of some long-extinct creature, fossilized by the planet's harsh environment. But then, it moved, slowly, faintly. The massive body shifted, revealing a pair of luminous eyes that pulsed with the faint glow of dying stars. It was a dragon, an enormous, otherworldly being unlike anything the humans had ever encountered. The sight of the worm left the team frozen in fear. Even in its weakened state, its colossal, coiled form was a breathtaking spectacle. Its scales were dull, but still emitted a faint sheen in the planet's weak light. Its wings, once vast enough to obscure entire skies, were now fractured and motionless. Its breath, which had once been capable of unleashing cosmic storms, was labored and shallow. Lieutenant Harmon instinctively reached for his weapon, but Dr. Reyes, his eyes wide with fascination, immediately restrained him. This was not merely an alien predator to be feared. It was something ancient, something extraordinary. Reyes had dedicated his life to the study of extraterrestrial species, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Do you realize what this is?" he whispered in awe, barely able to contain his excitement. "This is a celestial worm, the last of its kind." The rest of the team was less enthusiastic. To them, the worm was a potential threat, a gargantuan beast that could crush them with a single swipe of its claws if it so desired. But Reyes saw beyond the immediate danger. He knew the legends of the celestial worms, how they had been hunted to near extinction by the galactic hegemony, how they were said to command the forces of the universe itself. The mere existence of one, still alive on this desolate planet, was an impossibility he could not ignore. Captain Drace, upon being informed, was initially skeptical. They had their own urgent concerns, chief among them escaping this planet alive. But Dr. Reyes insisted they investigate further. He argued that if they could establish communication with the creature, they might find a way to assist it, and in turn, it could aid them. The worm's weakened state meant it posed no immediate threat, and Reyes was convinced there was more to its story than they understood. After considerable deliberation, the crew cautiously approached the dragon. The worm, barely conscious, sensed their presence but made no aggressive move. Its massive body was broken, its energy depleted, and it could barely muster the strength to open its eyes. Yet in those brief moments of contact, there was no malice in its gaze, only profound sorrow. Dr. Reyes knelt before the dragon, speaking softly, attempting to establish some form of communication. At first, there was no response. The dragon remained still, its breathing shallow. But after several minutes, something shifted. The worm, recognizing the crew's intentions were not hostile, emitted a low, rumbling sound, an ancient form of communication that resonated through the very ground. It was not articulate speech, but it was something, a sign that it understood their presence. The crew realized they had discovered something extraordinary, something the galaxy had long believed to be extinct. The humans quickly understood that if they were to survive, they needed to ensure the worm's survival as well. Its condition was far worse than they had initially imagined. Its body bore the marks of countless battles, and its once mighty form was now weakened to the point of near collapse. Yet despite its immense size and power, there was a fragility about it in this moment. The crew understood that the galactic hegemony had left it here to perish, but they were determined not to let that happen. They scavenged what they could from their ship's medical supplies. It was not much. Human technology was not designed to treat a creature of the worm's scale or biology, but they improvised. Dr. Reyes took the lead, utilizing every ounce of his knowledge regarding alien physiology, even though worms were far beyond anything he had studied. They managed to seal some of its external wounds and provided it with sustenance, albeit in a form that was not ideal for a dragon. Water was scarce, but they shared what they had, rationing their own supplies to keep it alive. They fed it nutrient packs from their emergency stores, mixing them into a crude paste that the worm hesitantly consumed. At first, the worm seemed suspicious of their intentions. It had been betrayed by so many before, cast out by those who had once revered it. Trust did not come easily for a being who had lived through centuries of conflict and isolation. Yet, even in its weakened state, the worm could sense something different about the humans. Unlike the species of the galactic hegemony, who had sought its destruction out of fear, these humans displayed no signs of hostility. Instead, they approached it with genuine concern and an empathy it had not experienced in millennia. The dragon began to trust them. Its wounds slowly healed, though the process was far from effortless. The toxic atmosphere of the planet made it difficult for it to regain full strength, but the humans did everything in their power to assist. The worm, for its part, began to comprehend that these humans were not like the others. They were persistent, resourceful, And most importantly, they showed compassion towards a creature the galaxy had branded a monster. As the worm grew stronger, so did its bond with the crew. Communication was challenging at first. The worm's spoken language was ancient, a deep rumble that resonated in ways the humans had never encountered. But Dr. Reyes, ever the scholar, was patient. Over time, they developed a rudimentary system of communication, blending words with gestures and emotions that the worm could perceive through the atmosphere. It was not perfect, but it was sufficient. The worm began to share its story, revealing fragments of a past that stretched back to an era predating the galactic hegemony, a time when the galaxy was a far more untamed and mysterious place. It spoke of cosmic phenomena that humans had never even conceived of stars that embraced one another across the void, of forgotten cosmic narratives. Beneath the surface of desolate worlds lay dormant technologies, along with powers capable of rewriting the very fabric of the cosmos. His knowledge was profound, amassed over millennia of existence, and the humans stood in awe of the profound wisdom he possessed. One particular narrative captured the crew's undivided attention. It spoke of a concealed power source, something ancient and immensely potent, lost to the annals of time. This was not something known to the Galactic Union. Only the starbound dragons had ever possessed the secret to its whereabouts. This energy nexus, LX explained, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It held the potential to revolutionize interstellar travel, enabling vessels to traverse the galaxy in ways previously relegated to the realm of fantasy. However, a significant caveat existed. Only a dragon could access it. The humans were utterly captivated by this revelation. For centuries, humanity had striven to transcend its limitations, to explore the furthest reaches of the galaxy. This energy source represented the key to achieving such ambitions. Yet, its significance extended far beyond mere exploration. With access to such immense power, humanity could challenge the Galactic Union's iron grip on the galaxy, leveling the playing field and allowing humans to stand as equals among the more advanced species. As they pondered this prospect, Captain Drace's mind raced. She understood the implications for humanity, but more than that, she saw a chance to rectify the injustices inflicted upon his kind. The dragons had been relentlessly hunted, driven to the brink of extinction due to their inherent power, their knowledge, and the fear they evoked in others. Humanity, however, differed from the rest. Where the Galactic Union perceived a threat, Drace and her crew saw a potential ally. The crew reached a unanimous accord. They would aid LX in his recovery, and in return, he would guide them to the hidden energy source. This alliance, however, was not merely a transaction. It was forged on a foundation of mutual regard. The dragons had been forsaken by the galaxy, much as humanity had frequently found itself isolated and underestimated. Together, they possessed the potential to alter the galactic power dynamic, not only for themselves, but for the future of all species subjugated by the Galactic Union. Armed with LX's knowledge and human ingenuity, they began to formulate a strategy. Their immediate priority was to depart the planet, a formidable task given their damaged vessel. Yet, LX, now recuperating his strength, offered assistance in ways they had not anticipated. His ancient powers, though diminished, could still influence their surroundings, and with time, he would be instrumental in their escape. In reciprocation, the humans pledged to facilitate his complete recovery, scouring the planet for resources and dedicating themselves to improving his condition. The bond between them deepened, nurtured not just by necessity, but by a shared understanding that their collective strength far surpassed their individual capabilities. LX, once a feared and solitary entity, now found himself allied with beings who saw him not as a monster, but as a creature deserving of respect and dignity. As they prepared for the ensuing phase of their journey, the crew understood the inherent dangers that lay ahead, yet they felt ready. With LX by their side, they were no longer merely a group of stranded explorers. They were participants in something far grander, a partnership poised to reshape the destiny of the galaxy. The Galactic Union had perpetually maintained a vigilant watch over the toxic planet where they had marooned LX, believing it to be a perfect solution, a place where a dragon's power would be stifled by the harsh environment. They assumed no one, not even a being as formidable as LX, could survive for long. However, When a fleeting distress signal from the human crew's vessel momentarily flickered across their sensors, alarms blared. The Union, inherently paranoid, could not afford to dismiss such a possibility. The notion that LX might still be alive, and worse, might have allied with an unknown faction, was far too perilous to disregard. In response, the Union dispatched a reconnaissance team to the planet, their orders explicit: investigate any signs of life and, if necessary, neutralize the threat before it could escalate. The Union could not tolerate a resurgence of the Dragons or any alliance that might empower their adversaries. If LX had somehow survived, they would ensure he never left the planet alive. The humans, still engaged in repairing their ship and attending to LX's full recovery, remained oblivious to the Galactic Union's impending arrival. The distress signal had been a mere anomaly, a brief malfunction that was swiftly rectified, but it sufficed to alert the Union to their presence. It was not long before the human crew detected an inbound vessel on the planet's periphery, its trajectory unmistakably purposeful. The crew convened in their makeshift encampment, a palpable tension rising as they debated their options. Captain Drace, maintaining her characteristic composure, understood the direness of their predicament: limited resources, an injured dragon, and a barely functional ship. Fleeing was not yet a viable option. Some crew members advocated for immediate escape before the Union forces landed, arguing that they had yet to be discovered. Others countered that evasion would prove futile. The Union would relentlessly pursue them if they abandoned LX. A heated debate ensued, with some crew members still hesitant about their alliance with the Dragon, fearing that assisting LX might spell their doom. The Galactic Union was an unforgiving adversary, and direct confrontation seemed suicidal. They could take their chances, attempt to leave the planet, and evade detection long enough to escape the Union's grasp. But what if they failed? Union ships were faster, better equipped, and more numerous. Drace listened intently to their concerns but remained steadfast. LX was their sole hope. Without him, they would be unable to withstand the Union's retaliation. Abandoning him now would not only be a betrayal of their shared endeavors, but would also mean forfeiting their only ally capable of aiding them in their fight. If humanity was to challenge the Union's dominion over the galaxy, they required LX and the power he promised. LX, sensing the growing unease among the humans, remained composed, despite not being fully healed. His strength had returned sufficiently for him to stand and articulate his thoughts clearly. He assured the crew that he understood their fears, having himself been a target of the Union's might, just as they were now. However, he also presented a solution. His knowledge of the ancient cosmos extended beyond energy sources and forgotten technologies. Over millennia, he had learned to manipulate the very fabric of space in ways the Galactic Union had long since forgotten. LX explained that he could cloak their presence on the planet, rendering them invisible to Union sensors, at least temporarily. It was not a flawless solution. His strength remained limited, and utilizing his powers in his weakened state would be perilous. Yet, it represented their best opportunity for evading detection. The humans concurred, placing their trust in the Dragon once more. As the Union's reconnaissance team descended toward the planet's surface, their advanced scanning equipment probed the toxic atmosphere for any indication of life. They detected nothing. No heat signatures, no life forms, no energy readings. The planet appeared as barren and inhospitable as they had left it. However, the team's commander, a seasoned Union officer, remained unconvinced. He knew better than to rely solely on his instruments. The Union's paranoia ran deep, and if there was even a remote possibility that LX had survived, they could not afford to take any chances. LX, exerting a tremendous effort, enveloped the humans and their camp in a field of distorted energy. It was not a conventional cloaking device, but rather a manipulation of the planet's natural energy fields, an ability unique to a dragon of his age and wisdom. The Union sensors would interpret the area as a natural anomaly, dismissing any unusual readings as mere environmental interference. Nevertheless, the tension in the air was palpable. The human crew remained concealed, their hearts pounding as the Union forces swept across the planet, searching for any sign of them. LX, despite his weakened condition, maintained the cloak for as long as he could, but it was evident that his reserves were finite. Each passing minute exacted a toll on the Dragon, and the humans could clearly perceive the strain he endured. The Union team, growing increasingly frustrated by the lack of results, began to widen their search radius, deploying drones to comb the planet's surface for anything out of the ordinary. Time was of the essence. LX, sensing the imminent depletion of his strength, urgently warned the humans that they needed to act swiftly. Remaining hidden indefinitely was not an option, and the Union would not cease their efforts easily. Drace recognized that their window of opportunity was closing. The Union would not relent until they either found LX or departed, convinced of his demise. Abandoning the dragon was out of the question. If they were to survive, they had to prepare for an engagement. As the Union forces intensified their search, the human crew steeled themselves for the inevitable confrontation. They knew evasion was not a sustainable strategy, but with LX by their side, they possessed a fighting chance. Together, they would confront whatever lay ahead, understanding that their survival and the future of humanity hinged on their alliance with the last of the dragons. The Galactic Union's forces were now present on the planet, their vessels hovering overhead like predators observing their prey. The human crew knew they were vastly outnumbered, but they also possessed an advantage the Union lacked: LX. Though not yet at his full strength, the dragon's cosmic powers were unlike anything the Union had ever encountered. LX had conveyed that the time for concealment was over. Now was the moment to retaliate, to expose the deceit and fear that had driven the Union to hunt his kind to the brink of extinction. Drace and her crew moved with swift precision, employing their tactical expertise and engineering skills to prepare for the unavoidable conflict. They were outgunned, but humanity had always excelled at leveraging whatever resources were available to shift the balance of power. The crew strategically laid traps across the desolate landscape, utilizing the planet's own toxic environment to their advantage. Explosive devices were rigged, concealed beneath the jagged rocks, and the terrain was deliberately manipulated to create bottlenecks where the Union forces could be funneled. LX, his body still bearing the scars of his prolonged exile, stood tall, his eyes alight with the energy of the stars he had harnessed. He had tapped into the cosmic forces that had once rendered his kind the guardians of the galaxy, and now he would wield that power not merely for self-preservation, but to forge a new future. He could feel the allure of the stars, the energy coursing through his veins, ready to be unleashed. The initial wave of Union soldiers descended, confident in their numerical superiority and advanced technology, believing this would be a swift victory. However, the humans were prepared. As the Union forces advanced towards the camp, the first trap was sprung, erupting in explosions that ripped through the rocky terrain, sending debris flying and throwing the Union soldiers into disarray. The humans, employing guerrilla tactics, struck with speed and decisive force, engaging the Union ranks before melting back into the shadows of the planet's harsh environment. Yet, the Union's relentless advance continued, with more forces deployed and their sophisticated weaponry beginning to wear down the human defenses. Drace realized they could not sustain their resistance indefinitely. Their only hope rested with LX. As the Union forces pressed closer, LX unleashed his power. The sky darkened as he drew energy from the celestial bodies above, channeling it through his immense form. A torrent of cosmic energy surged through the Union vessels, disabling their systems and sending them crashing to the ground. The soldiers on the ground were caught completely off guard as LX's power swept through their ranks, bending the very fabric of space around them. But the battle transcended mere survival. It was about revealing the truth. As LX fought, he activated an ancient communication device embedded deep within his scales, a relic from the era of the Starbound dragons, capable of broadcasting a message across the galaxy. With the last vestiges of his strength, LX transmitted a message, exposing the Galactic Union's conspiracy to annihilate the dragons out of fear. The message was unequivocal and undeniable. LX's deep, resonant voice echoed across the cosmos, reaching distant civilizations. He recounted how the Union had manipulated the narrative, branding the dragons as malevolent beings when, in reality, they had strived only to safeguard the galaxy. The Union's falsehoods had led to the near extinction of one of the galaxy's most ancient and formidable species, all in the pursuit of control and driven by fear. As the message disseminated, it ignited a conflagration of rebellion. Civilizations long subjugated by the Union began to question their rulers. Outrage surged as the truth became irrefutable. Protests and uprisings erupted throughout the galaxy with widespread calls for justice and accountability. The Galactic Union, once perceived as the ultimate authority, now found itself on the defensive. On the planet's surface, the Union forces faltered. LX, though weakened, had irrevocably altered the course of events. The Union soldiers, realizing they had been deceived, began to retreat. Some even defected, unwilling to continue fighting for a cause founded on deception and fear. The battle had concluded. The humans and LX had emerged victorious. As the dust settled, LX stood alongside the human crew. They had risked everything to aid him, and in return, he had granted them the opportunity to reshape their future. He offered to guide humanity to the hidden energy source he had previously mentioned, a source capable of revolutionizing space travel and providing humanity with a fighting chance against the lingering remnants of the Union's authority. Drace and her crew readily accepted his offer. Together, humans and the last starbound dragon would forge a new alliance, one built upon trust, collaboration, and a shared vision for the future. They understood that the path ahead would be arduous, that the Union would not relinquish its power easily, but for the first time in a considerable period, the galaxy held a glimmer of hope. As LX and the humans prepared to depart the planet, they recognized that this was merely the beginning. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same. With the wisdom of the last dragon and the ingenuity of humanity, they would confront whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to reconstruct the galaxy, liberated from the tyranny of the Union. The future was theirs to shape, and they would do so united.